I think at the moment the council look to be backtracking a little bit on the original meeting where they offered their open apology to the community, and they made a resounding commitment to buy the land back. It now seems that after taking legal advice, that they're creating delays and further delays and obfuscation. The community are once again exempt from hearing various parts of information from the council meeting, and we don't really think that that's acceptable.
So the council are now saying that they won't discuss with developers until after the Supreme Court outcome. Why do you think that might be the case?
We think it's a delay. We think it's a delay tactic. The Supreme Court is really looking at something completely different. They're looking at trust and custodianship. They're not specifically looking at the Greenfields issue, and we think it's purely for one reason, and that is they want to delay coming to a conclusion on buying the land back.
And there were discussions tonight about whether an inventory should now take place on all land adjacent to leisure and recreational ground. What are your thoughts on that?
The language, again, is really interesting. The word adjacent or adjoining were brought in at council meetings. If you'd go to the land registry, the land has always been called Greenfields Recreation Ground. There has never been a piece of land adjoining Greenfields Recreation Ground or adjacent to. That language was brought in to try and mask or cover the fact that a piece of recreation ground was being disposed of. And I think, the council trying to say tonight that they know what they own and they know where the land is obviously not true, because they managed to make this incredible error and, not know what they own. So I actually think the person who was recommending that, the councillor that was putting that forward, I think it's an excellent idea. I think they should review, the land that they own and make sure that they don't dispose of recreation ground in the future. And I would apply that to all bits of, whether that's the quarry in the middle of town, what are the extents of the quarry? Where does it begin? Where does it end? What do they own? And make sure they don't make this mistake again. It's a real blunder by the councillor, and they're starting to understand the trouble that they put themselves in by doing so.
After the last meeting, when you got the apology, you got progress on the fact that the council looked to at least try and get the land back, this meeting you seem a bit more downbeat. You went to the pub last time, you seem a bit more downbeat this time.
Yeah, it's probably celebrated a bit too early. I mean, once you start looking at the language of the council recommendation from the previous meeting, you started to understand, obviously, the apology was really well received by the community, and, the actual idea that they were going to buy the land back and look to buy the land back was well received by the community as well. The community's been fighting for 4 years. It spent a lot of money, it spent a lot of time, trying to rectify a mistake that was by the council themselves. And that was really well. But once you start looking at language, you start to see words like recommendation. It wasn't commitment. So you start to think, well, actually, there's a bit of wiggle room being introduced very early on into that document, and that wiggle room seems to be getting bigger. The delay factor just seems to be showing that the intent of the council is possibly not as forthright as we thought it was from the first meeting that we had. What we think is that, the council, the developer and the financier are all local residents. They all know now that there's been a mistake. Shropshire Council as well, they should all be now around the table discussing this and trying to think, how do we put this right? The people that bought the park in the first place, the original purchasers, the sort of forefathers, bought it for the health and well-being of the residents of Greenfields, and they seem to have a much more forward-thinking attitude than the current council. They've sold off a park. I mean, nationally that is a disgrace. That they are selling recreation ground at a time, particularly post-COVID, where people understand the value and the purpose and the reason for having these, and we're going to get known, Shrewsbury's going to get known as the council that sold recreation land. It's terrible. It really is terrible.